All right, testing, testing. We are live. All right, let me reach out. All right, we're live. I have made contact with Miss Divested. See if she can join me. Got a couple videos to pull up. I'd like to ask a couple questions for her. Reached out to her. I got some stuff lined up. And yeah, we'll see if she can come on. Got the link in this chat room. All ready to go. Reached out to her to let her know I'm live right now. Let me see if she got that. All right, I reached out to her and told her we use YouTube as a comments board. Just wanted to try to narrow it down to a couple questions, get her opinion, and then I have a video from the news that I would like to show her. And I hope she's able to come on. I mean, if not, I understand. YouTube does this weird thing where I'll be live, but you won't be able to find it. So what you'll have to do is you have to put in a video with the direct title of one of my videos, hit enter, you'll find the video, go to the channel, and then you'll see that I'm live. So it's just goofy how that works. So what I do is reaching out back and forth. You can use YouTube as a message board. You can refresh. And then if you get a notification on a comment, you guys can kind of reach out to each other. So I'm going to reach out to her one more time. No problem. Thanks for reaching out. I'm live right now. Oh, my typing's terrible. I'm live right now. So we'll just try to reach out a couple times. Again, just got a couple questions because I'm curious to hear her perspective. Depends on how much time she has. So I guess you could say impromptu, but still very curious. Just her opinion on a couple things, what she says. And she's a little more, well, she just speaks plainly. She talks the plain speak. You might say, some people might say, some younger people might say that, but she's just going to tell you what she sees. And I like that. That's great. Because that's what we need. So let me see. We'll refresh. See if she can jump on. I will. Let me bring up this story because I do want to get her opinion of this. I think this is interesting, and I'd really like to hear what she thinks about it. So, anyone jumping on? This is an organization in Philadelphia where they're trying to do a play, and they actually show two scenes from the play. And I'm very curious. I mean, I listen to a lot of divested. Uh, I listen to channels like Cynthia G and Divested Zealot, so I think I'm aware of some of the major points and talking points and concerns, some of the things that they would point out. But again, having another person on, a fresh perspective, I think that's always useful because divested to me is basically seen as a line in the sand, just saying, hey, look, we're done. We're not doing this. We're not trying to live with you. We're not trying to accept you. You can go over there and we're going to go over here, and basically it's segregation. And that doesn't bother me. That's just what it is, and that's fine. You're supposed to have freedom of association in this country. You should be allowed to live somewhere safe, and criminals should be punished, but that's not really what's happening. So I'll see if she'll jump on. I'll reach out to her. What did I call my channel? It's called Interview Part 2. Let me see if I can look it up. Called two. Two. All right, so I reached out to her again. I guess for some footage, let me see. We'll save this one and we'll go back to. Let's go to Philly Fox News. See what else is happening in Philly. School shooting. That was a month ago. Oh, yeah, this was the guy who shot the Latino kid. This was a day after this was right after the Temple cop was shot. So, I mean, I'm surprised the news even shows this. Usually they go out of their way to hide the identity. I literally had a if you haven't seen this, I guess we'll show this.
Crowds were lining up to honor a fallen Temple police sergeant. Officers from the same police precinct that responded to his shooting 5 nights earlier were called to a mass shooting tonight right near a North Philadelphia school. And details on that shooting are still breaking tonight. At least 7 people have been shot. The youngest victim, a toddler, just 2 years old. I'm Jason Martinez.
I'm Sheba Russell. The gunshot started just as the after-school program at the Blaine School was letting out, sending the victims racing back into the schoolyard for cover. Chris has been following the story all night long for us. He's live at police headquarters.
And Chris, what are you learning?
Well, guys, an awfully violent night in the city. Philadelphia police are now saying a total of 7 victims of that mass shooting tonight in the Strawberry Mansion section of Philadelphia, including that 2-year-old girl and 5 other teenagers, all students at schools in the Philadelphia School District. All of those victims are still in the hospital tonight, and there have been no arrests. Let's take you to the scene around 6 o'clock tonight. It all happened on the corner of 31st and Norris Streets when at least 30 shots were fired just before 6, about a block away from where an after-school program was letting out at the James G. Blaine School. A 31-year-old woman was shot. Her 2-year-old daughter was also shot in the leg while getting her diaper changed. 5 other teenagers were also shot, all of them transported to area hospitals. All are stable tonight. Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw saying the shooting may have been a retaliation.
As a parent myself, I absolutely understand the worry and the fear that whether you're a parent or not, that you have just walking up and down the street in the neighborhood. So I wouldn't take that away from anybody. And I'm not trying to make excuses or justify anything. What I'm saying is that we're constantly working around the clock to ensure that what we're doing is effective and not just throwing bodies at a situation. We want to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen.
I think that's the wrong approach.
Now, Sky Fox over the scene tonight where police were poring over the ballistic evidence. Witnesses say they heard many, many gunshots, including one man we spoke with who was a shooting victim himself twice before.
It frightens me to even want to step out and speak.
Can't speak that well, honestly. All right, so now we have an actual. Here we go. This is what I want.
Rocking chair would look great in our new house.
Oh, a new house, eh? Well, you should definitely see how Geico could help you save on homeowners insurance.
Nice tip. I'll give you $2 for the chair.
2? That's a Victorian antique.
Victorian antique.
Geico. Gunfire rang out tonight near a school in Philadelphia, injuring a toddler, 5 teenagers, and a woman. Sharpest
Burst of gun violence. Yeah, the gun did it all by itself. That's right.
shows police swarming the scene in Strawberry Mansion where evidence markers litter the streets. Tonight, the search is on for 3 gunmen. Thursday night, and the big story on Action News is the burst of gun violence that left 7 people injured. Action News reporter Annie McCormick has the latest.
Or is this another shooting?
Now know that there were 7 people shot at the intersection of 31st and Norris.
The gunfire broke out at 31st and Norris just before 6 p.m. tonight. Police just released these new images.
There we go. Yeah, so I mean, and it's a Hyundai. So they probably saw on Instagram how to hotwire it, and they stole it, and then they just dumped it.
Images showing 3 offenders using a 2011 to 2016 gray 4-door Hyundai Elantra with an unknown Pennsylvania tag. A 31-year-old woman was shot 2 times in her thigh. Her 2-year-old daughter also shot in the thigh. The rest of the victims are all teenage boys. 2 16-year-olds were shot in the arm, 1 also in the leg. A 15-year-old was shot twice in the chest and the thigh. A 13-year-old was shot in the hand. And a 17-year-old suffered a graze wound.
This has been a fairly quiet portion of the 22nd District for quite some time now. So at this point, we're piecing everything together to figure out if this was retaliatory, if some of those victims were intended or not. But it's still really early to tell.
Since Saturday, the 22nd Police District, which encompasses this part of Strawberry Mansion, has seen a Temple University police officer killed, multiple teens shot, And now, tonight's mass shooting. Tonight's shooting happened near Blaine Elementary School. The teens shot tonight are students within the Philadelphia School District. Mustafa Ali was here after the shooting stopped and saw some of the victims. His son was not among them. The gunshot survivor says he easily could have been.
The headline is going to be teen shot. I got a team. So it's just like, whether it was my son shot or not, it's just like, there's nothing, that's making me feel any better that it wasn't my child, because it was my child friends.
And Rick, at last check, all staff are listening.
Hey, thanks for jumping on.
Hey, I'm so sorry. I forgot that you were on Eastern Standard Time.
No, it's no problem. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. Here, let me pull this off. Sure, that's not the something you want to see right now, but we cover Philly crime and their inability to really address it or anything. And I wanted to, I wanted to try to narrow it down to maybe a couple questions from your perspective, just to really get as much out of it as I could. So I tried to narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 questions, and then I wanted to maybe show you a news clip of what the community's answer is to the violence, and I wanted to get your opinion. And it's something that's happening right now, just to get your perspective. I mean, I'm well aware of, I guess you could call it, divested talking points. But again, hearing it from a member from the community is going to be different from me saying it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if I may, continuing from yesterday, you said you have children.
I have a child.
And yeah, you have a child. And he sounded grown.
You know what? Not quite, but almost.
Okay.
He's still in the oven cooking. He's not quite ready to come out yet.
Okay. My question was, what do you think is the best approach to shield or protect or avoid him from adopting the culture that you've moved away from? What do you have any tips or tricks, or what do you try to, are there things you try to keep him away from, or are there things that you look out for? Any sort of patterns of behavior?
I can only tell you what I did for me. Other people, I'm sure I'm looking. I'm looking at other women, seeing what did they do, but I know what I did, and this worked for me. So,
Sure.
My husband is from another country. Until my son was 5, he lived in that other country with his dad.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Kind of like a Boys in the Hood.
Well, boys on top of a mountain in El Salvador,
So an El Salvador version of Furious Styles, huh?
I don't know Furious Styles, but he lived up in El Salvador, up in the mountains, with his dad. His dad was his primary caregiver. We had an arrangement. When his dad went back to his country, I was having major problems with babysitters, and so his father, he called me and said, "Hey, bring my son to me." I said, "Okay." So I took the baby to his father, and basically I said, "Well, he needs to be potty trained." And so he took over primary care, and I ran back and forth for years to El Salvador, because I was married, and my son is there. And so my son has a strong connection to his father's culture. I brought my son back when it was time for him to go to kindergarten. But when I brought him back, by then I had went ahead and I remarried, and I moved out to the far, far suburbs. And my son basically was not around Blackistan. We lived in a suburb that was about, I would say, maybe 3% black. It just he was just not around it, and so
Okay. So let me. So you was okay. So he grew up in a completely different environment with a
yes.
completely different culture.
Yes, I'm not listening to rap music. I'm not watching like all this garbage on like, TV, the hood movies, and all of that. That's not in my house. That's not how he was raised. He was not exposed to it. He lived in a completely different environment. And, and he was also very close to his father's culture.
Okay. So can I lean into that a little bit? Can you provide maybe just some examples of, you said El Salvador?
Yes.
Could you please give some example of what you can
His baby picture.
Ah, those cheeks.
A chubber wubber.
I mean, all babies have a fat face phase. That's okay.
I love chubby babies, so
Oh, my daughter had that too until she got a growth spurt. So what would you say are some of the primary differences? I guess you would say, is it El Salvadorian and
um
Blackistan?
I would say this. Um, I'm no expert on anything, but this is my personal experience with a lot of Latin cultures. They're very, very family oriented. Not just family oriented, but if you go to their countries, I don't know any of their countries that have, government programs to like welfare, food stamps, and stuff like that. So you just got to work. You got to grind it out. You got to earn your bread however you can. So combine that hard work ethic with family ethic. With family. Yeah, just that love of family, that close bonding. Um, I was attracted to that. I didn't see that in Blackistan.
So, so this is, I guess, is a question about El Salvador culture. Is is it? Do they have the grandparents still living in the home as opposed
Oh,
to?
everybody is there. If they're not in the home, they may be next door. The family is tight. Okay,
Mm,
there is that bond. Like, okay, when my son lived with his dad in El Salvador, one of the things that happened was when I went down there, and I'm talking to him, I'm talking to his relatives. We had a group meeting with some of the family that was still there. And these women came to me and they said, "Don't worry, we've got him. He's
wow.
ours." So when it was time for him to go to preschool, his preschool teacher was a cousin. Everybody around him was family. He was surrounded with love and family and examples of how to act and how to interact.
So he had to actually be placed into a completely different cultural, genetic. I don't know what terminology you're comfortable using, but he actually had to be removed from. I guess you could say he had to divest himself.
I
Is that
divested for him.
fair
I
enough?
I took him out. I never, you know what? I don't even want to say divested. He was never invested.
That's fair enough. So he had no idea. So he just was basically immersed in a very family oriented, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, but you have support from your parents and your grandparents. And is El Salvador a very Catholic community
It's a
or?
very religious community. Catholics dominate, but of course they have a lot of Protestants. They just call themselves Christians. Um, it's a very religious, small, very poor country. I mean, it is a poor country, but it's coming up.
Now, something in popular media, isn't El Salvador the place that just had a very young president who just created the super prison?
Yes,
And he basically just said, if you're a gang member, you're done.
Yes, he did, because this is what was happening. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit that what I know. All
Oh,
right.
please.
El Salvador had a very long
MS-13.
civil. Yeah, they had a very long civil war, and a lot of people from El Salvador escaped. A good portion of the population. Some of them came here to the United States, and some of them were just trash ass garbage human beings who created that one gang MS-13, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so what happened was the United States government basically said, okay, we got enough of this trash. And they started shipping people back. They started shipping back all the gangbangers. You messed up. It was like, you know what? No, we're not sending you to jail. We're sending you back to your country. And so they shipped a lot of these people back to their country. When they got back to their country, crime really did explode, because you know what? El Salvador is right in the middle of the drug trafficking thing, right? And so for a few years, it was out of control. You had gang people who were like recruiting children, whether you like it or not. Work for us or we'll kill your mother, kill your sister, whatever. And so the gang violence was out of control. Here comes this new president, and he says he rounded hundreds and hundreds of them up and put them in prison. And since then, the crime rate has dropped tremendously. I didn't go to El Salvador for a few years just because the crime was out of control,
Yeah.
completely out of control. And so, but the new president, he cleaned it up a lot. And he did a few other things with the country. And so now El Salvador is a very different country than it was a few years ago.
And I follow a channel called Ak Nation News.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but
Mm-mm.
he's a Nigerian. His name is Akintunde, and basically he just reports on black crime. And his channel is shadow banned and it gets suppressed. And of course, so his YouTube followers, he can never get past a certain number. I've been unsubscribed from his channel like 4 times. I have to resubscribe. And all he does is he just goes to he'll go pick a city. They go to a city, and he just goes to the local news, and he just shows the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that one of the things that happened was they had like a major city and they had 90 homicides in one weekend. And that's how bad it was. And
Sound like
he also,
Chicago.
yeah. And another thing he did was he did a very old trick. I don't know if he learned this from World War II, where he put one of the opposing gangs of the MS-13 in charge of the security at the prison. So he said, we need to have people who are just as brutal to keep these people in line. And that seems to be a pattern you can also see in certain states in Africa as well. I always wonder how people can complain about police interaction here, and it's like, well, have you been to China? Have you been to Afghanistan? Have you been to the Congo or Kenya or Uganda, where I've seen cops take the flat end of a machete and just beat the crap out of you because you stole something. And
there's a program on it's on Netflix, and there's this guy who's from England, and his whole program, his whole series is he goes around the world and he goes into different prisons to see how they treat prisoners. He's gone into Latin American prisons, brutal. He's shown European prisons, and European prisons are very different than talk about civilized. But yeah, it's different. Underdeveloped nations, when you go to prison, it is nothing like here. It's nothing like here. Although I know the prisons here, aren't. Look, I'm not going to get into that because I'm thinking some of these people, they need to be locked up and thrown away. Throw away the key. But you know what? But I also understand, if you become as brutal as the people that you're trying to incarcerate, are you any better than them? I don't know. But I'm not trying to it's not my forte. I'm not into it. Let the experts with the big brains deal with that. I just say if somebody goes to prison, Goodbye.
No, I agree. I think it requires a fair amount of force to keep someone in line who only respects force.
And they do only respect force. You can see that here, you can see that there.
Yes. And I guess that'll lead me into my next question. And thank you for that answer. So your answer was you didn't allow your son to become invested in the first place.
No, I completely took him away from the culture.
Now let me give a shout out to Divested Zealot. And what I've heard, one thing she does is, and this is the reason I wanted to do this. I've listened to women come on the panel and they tell individual things that have happened in their life to them. And I thought it might, and that's one way to do it. I also thought it would be maybe more beneficial as another way to do it is just to hear someone's entire story.
Mm.
So, and she says that she sits down and she reaches out to people and she does one-on-ones and she'll try to help you like a consult.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish to ask you sort of a similar question. Not that you're expected to do that, but how do you choose from women in your community? What would you say are signs that they're walking in the direction or in the same path that you had? How are they becoming more divested versus how do you identify a woman who's becoming more of a mammy, I guess you could say?
For me, my whole life, I just thought, oh, women, we're wonderful. We're so wonderful. We never do anything wrong. We shit glitter. Okay.
Queens.
Look, I'm telling you, but the last few years, I've kind of broken out of that mindset. And I see that there are a lot of women out here who are as toxic, as dangerous, as the men. Maybe they don't fill the violence quota the way men do, but they help these guys. Look at all the women who help the men sex traffic other women. Yeah. So, but for me, I'm very neutral when I deal with other women. Period. I'm very, very neutral. I wait to see what they say. I wait to see if they start saying how they're fed up with going through all the stress and trauma. And then I throw a few little things in there and see if they're coming in that direction. But I don't proselytize to anybody. I feel like if you're actually fed up enough to make a change, well then yeah, I'll be there for you. But for most black women are mammies. Most black women support the toxic black culture. Black women that I actually admire still have a whole big streak of, I guess, mammyism, as they say, like divestors say. So I'm neutral. I'm like, I am not one of a Jehovah's Witness coming up to your door trying to convert you. Either you move along on your own accord and then I'll support you. But if you want to stay where you are, I'm not wasting my breath.
So you wait for them to initiate their own reasoning that you reached a while ago yourself. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because if I were to go and say something, whatever I'm going to say that's from a divested point of view, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to look at me like, you're bitter.
You hate yourself.
You hate black people. You're bitter. What man hurt you? It's all the same things they say over and over again.
Yeah.
No, sweetie, the fact of the matter is you're bitter. I'm not. I saw the shit on the sidewalk and I walked around it.
I have the same issue at my church. I'm surrounded by a lot of people who they seem to think that going to church and just praying is going to be enough. And they don't seem to understand that your children are going to school and this is an argument made by Divested Zealot herself. You're a single mom, and you think you're going to be more of an influence than your son or daughter with their peer group.
Mm-mm.
They're in school 40, 50 plus hours a week, and they're influenced by so much. You also have social media. So it's like, to me, the answer would be, well, why would I allow my children anywhere where they're taught or they're going to be in danger? I have to do something, whether that's stepping onto the school board physically myself, or potentially maybe taking a step into local politics. Because personally, I see a lot of videos of white parents they think yelling into a microphone is enough. And it's
No.
not. And I've seen two examples. I've seen DeSantis in Florida, and I know that he's bought and sold, but he reached out with his hand to a university. He removed 6 of the 13 members on the board and replaced them with 6 conservatives. And the same thing is happening in Idaho. There's a state university that just flipped to conservative, and now there are NGOs out there, and they're trying to like dox all of the conservatives on the board. And when I watch conservative outlets like neocons, and they post all these videos, oh, we're going to colleges and we're talking to kids and we're owning the libs. Well, what's the purpose of that? What is the purpose? Why do you keep complaining about colleges that keep putting out these liberal kids? Wouldn't the logical step be to create a conservative college?
Makes sense to me.
I think I've rambled enough. My apology.
No, that's fine.
So you wait for someone else that has similar viewpoints and experiences, and then you'll decide how serious they sound.
I do, because I also understand that. Okay, now I don't live in Blackistan, but the field that I work in, I work with a lot of Black people, and I work with a lot of foreign Black people too. I work with a lot of Africans, right? A lot of times when I go to work, when I'm in this environment, I understand I'm in the belly of the beast. I'm in a hostile environment. They don't want to hear what I have to say.
Right.
And if I start preaching what I want to preach, I'm going to be ostracized. I'm going to have issues. So I just keep my mouth closed. Now, if somebody starts saying something, in that vein, then I'll add to the conversation. But no, because I know my advice, my words, my point of view is not welcome. Most Black people are not conservative. And there are Black people who are conservative, but I have to look at them, and I really examine them, because I think, what kind of conservative are you? Are you a real conservative, or are you just in it for the money and the fame? Because you get to be a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond.
Yes.
I'm going to say, okay, there is Candace Owen, right? Now, she's a conservative, but I find her completely disingenuous. The reason why I find her completely disingenuous is that she had a 180 turn on her views on everything, and it was all for money. She's trying to get paid. Before, she was Candace Owen, and she got all this fame being a conservative, really going in on the Black community and things like that. She was one of the biggest liberals. She had a whole thing. She talked about Trump. She did a whole bunch of things. She used the NAACP to sue, because she said that she was being discriminated against and harassed by some white boys, and she got paid, and I think that, now, I do think that a lot of things that she has to say are valid, but I find her disingenuous.
If I could piggyback off that, when East Palestine happened and evidence was coming out that it might have been America or Ukraine who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, both of these big stories were happening. and she works for the Daily Wire, which is a neocon conservative, fake conservative outlet, which is owned by Ben Shapiro. And she was basically having a cat fight in her segment. And it's like, we literally just had a small scale Chernobyl in our country. And we're literally talking about nuclear war. And you're talking about having a fight with an Instagram girl. It's like, what are we talking about?
She's playing to the media, and she's pulling up controversial talking points that are going to get her more attention. Is she actually a serious person? I don't think so. Are her points of view serious? I don't think so. I think that she's a media personality. I don't take her serious at all.
You gave a couple examples of women you said you look up to, but they still have mammyism. Could you please provide an example of who they are, why you look up to them, but lean into the mammyism a little bit?
Let's see. This is hard to say because there's so many of them. So many. How about this? How about Michelle Obama? Okay. Michelle Obama is, I think, a brilliant, beautiful woman. Right? She's got she had a very successful career on her own. Matter of fact, she was the main breadwinner before Barack became president.
She was a lawyer, right?
She was a lawyer. She was on like all these boards and everything. She was the breadwinner. She was the money maker while he did his political thing or his activism thing. And then after he became president, she had to scale back, of course, because she's the first lady.
Well, Black women are typically the producers in the Black community. I mean, they're the most educated. They start the most businesses. It's been that way since I don't know how long.
And it's a damn shame. It's a shame. It's a shame that Black women have that burden on their backs because Black men have, they left the building. They're like, you know what? We're not going to be men. We're not going to do the traditional things that men are supposed to do. We're going to be these perpetual adolescents, and not take on the responsibilities of manhood, but we want the benefits of manhood. And so the women are still in the building with the kids trying to survive. And after a certain point, Black women just said, well, I guess we got to do it ourselves.
And you said, now, she is a Democrat. And you said in our last conversation that the Democrat Party has just like shifted. So the Overton window has just shifted so far over.
Woo! All of this, it's shifted way left. Now the Republican Party shifted way right, and the Democratic Party shifted way left. And there were a lot of us in the middle that were like, you know what? I don't fit in either way, in either direction.
Yeah. Could you get now? I'm going to provide an example of her with the agenda, and I'll ask your opinion, and then I'll please ask you to provide an example. And I don't know, do you know the rapper Lil Boosie?
Yes, I do.
He made a video calling out Dwayne Wade's son. And he was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Don't let them mutilate your child. And what's interesting is that a bunch of rich, famous Black people reached out to Lil Boosie and tried to get him to apologize. Mike Tyson had him on a show. The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God called him to talk to him. Hey man, do you feel sorry about what you said? You should apologize. And then Michelle Obama called Dwayne Wade's son in full support of him transitioning. And they were like, oh, and now you're going to be a model. And now you're going to be. And I how did you go from going to this? You said a Methodist church in Chicago.
The United Methodist. I belong to the United Methodist Church.
How did Michelle go from the United Methodist Church of Chicago to you
Oh,
should
no,
your
no, no.
son?
I belong to the United
Oh, you did.
Methodist
Oh,
Church.
I'm
She
sorry.
belongs to, Trinity on the South Side, and that's not a Methodist church. I don't belong to them. I've gone to that church because I have a friend who belongs there, and I think it's a lot of fun. Sometimes I church hop around because look, Black churches are a lot of fun. Okay, plain and simple. Black churches are a lot of fun, and Black gospel music is upper tier. So
Sure.
I'll go because I enjoy myself, and I can share fellowship. I can enjoy fellowship with other people who are, not of my faith. But I don't belong to that church because they have a lot of things going on in that church that I don't agree with.
And would this example of that phone call with Dwayne Wade's son be something you don't agree with?
You know what? I find that I find it abhorrent. Okay, I think that Dwayne Wade is a deviant, and what he's doing with his child, to me, it feels like child abuse. It feels like they're exploiting the hell out of this confused little boy who's probably just going to grow up to be gay. But they're pushing him in that direction, and they're getting a lot of publicity for it, aren't they? They're getting all kind of kudos. Hey, Michelle Obama called up this poor little confused child.
Yeah.
He's getting all of these raving. Oh, you get to be a model. Oh, all of this stuff. This is a child. Now, what happens some years from now when his brain actually matures and
Right.
and he understands himself? It was a phase.
Well,
But
if we
he's
look,
already in there. He's locked into that box.
yeah. I mean, what'll probably happen is what happens with most people who come out and say that they've detransitioned, which is they'll be shunned.
And he will be. Right now he's this child. He is a child. Is getting a lot of attention for this, a lot of positive attention. It's going to be very difficult for him to back out of it when he figures out maybe this is not who he is. What happens when Dwayne Wade's child grows up and he's not so cute? A lot of boys look very, not my son. My son has always been like just a boy, but who cannot, look like, who doesn't look feminine. He looks like a masculine ass man. When he grows up, he's going to be tall. He's going to look like Dwayne Wade. Do you think he's going to look like, I don't know, Laverne Cox? No. When he can't pull it off because he's not so cute anymore.
Right. I don't even wish to speak about the side effects of anything. I just wish to leave that alone. But
well, I think that we need to speak about the side effects of what they're doing to these children, because that's part of it too. You've got children who, look, I am not a medical expert, but you've got children.
Well, you don't need to be if you read the side effects.
Right. You're putting them on puberty blockers. You're giving them cross-sex hormones. Some of the medications that they're giving them are the same medications that they give to sex offenders to chemically castrate them.
Correct.
These children are going to be sterile.
And two of the side effects of Lupron, which is what they used to give to prepubescent girls, is it can cause osteoporosis or osteoporosis in the bones of teenagers. And it can also cause cognitive decline in your brain.
And they're doing this to children who society recognizes they are not mature enough to make certain decisions. Children, we understand, are not mature enough to have sex. They're not mature enough to drive.
Oh, that's the next step.
To sign contracts, to do any of these things. But you're willing to tell children, yes, you are mature enough to make these permanent decisions about your body.
Well, they seem to cherry pick what they choose to enforce and what they don't choose to enforce. For example, there's a rapper and a militant activist named Taj Morey. He's a rapper out of Philly, and he started a group called Black Guns Matter. And there's a pretty funny video where he went to George Floyd Square in Minneapolis, and he started giving people a gun safety course, and he basically said, the police are not going to save you. You have to save yourself. And it's always funny when he doesn't get asked on the news anymore, because the news is like, do you think guns in the black community more guns is a good idea? And he said, well, we have the right to defend ourselves. And they go, well, shouldn't you call the police? And he'll say, the same police you say that's racist and that's hunting black folk, like LeBron James told me. And it's like, they seem to pick and choose things that, like, there's no consistency. Like, oh, for children like Dwayne Wade's son, as you said, the brain doesn't fully develop until they're 25, right? But a 4-year-old is supposed to be 100% aware of what the opposite sex thinks, feels, acts, is, what they're attracted to. And as you said, we don't let them vote. We don't let them sign contracts. We don't let them own weapons. We don't let them use drugs. So which is it?
Right. Are they mature enough or aren't they mature enough? But see, I'm going to tell you something that this is my thought process. I could be wrong. I could be talking out of my ass. All right. Oh, sorry. I got a dirty mouth sometimes.
No. We're not that. No, I'm not that kind of channel.
I think that we've got something really, really malevolent going on as far as this whole movement towards children. And if you look at some of the writing, the seminal writings for the transgendered community, the people who were writing about this years ago and what they intend and everything. And one of the things that they intend is also to take away the age of consent for children. So now adults, can identify as what do they call themselves? Minor attracted people or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
They want full access to these children, and they want to pretend that these children are mature enough to make these decisions.
Yeah, and again, another example I like to use is, what is the purpose of having juvenile crime or juvenile court? If a 4-year-old is fully aware that they're able to change their identity and their gender, why is a 13-year-old not capable for being charged with murder?
Right. You can't have it both ways. You can't say on the one hand, children are not mature enough. Their brains don't function at a high enough level that they understand what they're doing when it comes to drinking, driving, drugs, this, that, all that. Okay. And then turn around and say, but they are mature enough to sterilize themselves.
Correct. Yeah. It's like this circular logic where we can't get past these certain points, and they want to. It's basically whatever points allow them to win. Mm-hmm. There is no consistency. So, and if I may, as a final part, because I don't wish to keep you all day, I wanted to give you an actual live video and just ask your opinion. So, if I may, can I bring this up right now? Do you have a couple minutes?
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you very much. Hang on, let me see. I'm not the best with the StreamYard. So, all right. So this came out a couple days ago, maybe yesterday, and this is essentially, well, let me just play it. They're talking about a crime which addresses gun violence.
Or what's happening on our streets. We want to help save communities by shedding light on those who are out there trying to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, a group of students aged 13 to 19 have been practicing for a play about how one gun can pass through different hands and impact so many lives.
And really, it's about different connections affecting our young people. So it's called Childhood Talking Chronicles, and it's directed by our next guest, Bilal Islam, and then beside him.
And I'll stop at any time if you want to make a point, or if you just want to watch the whole thing, whatever you're comfortable. I have some things I want to say, but I'm really curious what you have to say.
Him, Khalik Hayes, who's the creator and producer. You guys are a team on this one.
That's right.
And you brought along student actors to perform excerpts before this weekend show. It's kind of a preview of what people can experience.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a preview. It's like an appearance, not a preview, because so much more happens.
That's
so
true.
Well, the play is fairly long, isn't it? It's over 2 hours.
it's about 2 hours, 10 minutes long, without intermission. With intermission, probably 2 hours and 30 minutes.
What's your goal with it?
Well, my goal is to give an understanding of what's going on in our streets with our teenagers, our youth. Try to get them to understand that before they make a choice of doing something, maybe they can see something like this and figure, well, maybe I should think about it.
Instead of just talking about it, acting it out. Is that the point?
Exactly. Really just seeing other young people go through situations that they can often find themselves in, whether it's directly in front on related to a friend. A lot of everything we show is relevant to their situations every day. So we just create an opportunity where they can see it before it happens. So if they're ever in these situations, they just make better choices. They got a reference to build.
If I can make a point right here. When your son was going to school in El Salvador, were there any of these situations?
No,
Ah, okay.
absolutely not.
Okay. I'm going to, please.
This, when I see people who make these kind of plays and they try to make them like, as if they're cautionary tales. These plays in Blackistan, it's like Blackistan's version of masturbation. They're not really doing anything. They're just, scratching it. It's just self-pleasure. They're not really doing anything. They're not teaching. Okay, yeah, we have guns. Guns are definitely a symptom. Okay, but what comes before all the gun play? What comes before you decide to put a gun in your hand and create malice? It's the culture. I carry.
Oh, me too.
I carry.
2A all day.
Reason.
2A all day.
Thank you.
Pennsylvania shall issue open carry state, baby.
I carry. When I first moved to Chicago, my boyfriend was a cop, and he bought me a gun and took me to the range.
Based.
Because he knew I kept bad hours. And his philosophy was this: get them before they get you. But saying that, a lot of the guns that are floating around, the whole gun culture that is going on in Blackistan, it's just completely irresponsible. It's the guns are out there because of the drugs, because of the culture, because of the violence.
The music.
Hey, it's glorified, isn't it? It's glorified. It's held up like this is just what we do. Everybody's got to have, a pew pew. They just had this one basketball player, a couple of them. Yeah, who got in trouble because, he flashed a gun. And then they had another basketball player with something else with a gun related thing. It's the culture.
All right, I'm going to keep going. Is that okay? But excellent points. Excellent points. I just like it's guns, but it's the response. So you're saying it's more the responsibility of the person. You don't see it as a gun.
I think that, look, I live in Chicago. We have very, very strict gun laws here. Very strict. But it doesn't matter because you can drive right across to Indiana and it's guns, guns, guns. And they bring guns over to Chicago and unload them in the community. They're readily available. So yeah, guns are a problem, but also guns are in an environment where they become a problem. I don't look.
That's also a felony too, right?
Texas. I have a friend who lives in Texas, and I think they give you guns in kindergarten when you're in Texas. But I don't hear this kind of craziness.
And if I could make a comparison, and I'll see what you think. I'm fascinated by riots. I've done a lot of research into the 1992 LA riots. And one thing I like to point out whenever somebody says guns make people violent, I always like to point. I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary Clash of Colors from 1992,
Mm-mm.
it really focused a lot on the Korean perspective, where you have this group of people who, after the 65 Watts riots in
Mm-hmm.
LA, the whites moved away and the
Mm-hmm.
Koreans, a lot of Koreans moved in. And when, and I will address the shooting of Letitia Harlins. I'm not going to deny that happened. And I'm not going to deny for some reason the judge gave her probation when the court found her guilty. I don't know why
Mm-hmm.
that happened. It was a very young judge. But the Koreans were people, you had a group of people from another country where all the men had military training. The men had mandatory military training.
Mm-hmm.
And when the riots happened, all these men who have been in the community for years suddenly show up with machine guns, automatic rifles, long guns, shotguns, handguns. And till this point, even though they all had arsenals, they, you know, they could have easily, I believe, with their training, they could have easily become a gang. They could have taken over Compton. They could have taken over South Central, but they didn't. The guns were used to retaliate against Black and Latin gang members. So you have a group, essentially, you have a very heavily armed group of people who have even had military training, and you don't ever see the only story you know about the Korean killing somebody was Soo Young Do when she killed Letitia Harlins in the liquor store. So that's just my counter argument when someone says, "Oh, guns make people violent." Well, uh, again, a group of people heavily armed, stockpiled. They smuggled weapons here from Korea, and they never used them until the riots. I can't find any video footage from 91, 90, 88, 89 of Korean drive-bys and Korean gang members and random shootings, even though they all have the hardware.
Because it's not part of the culture.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know about the riots out in LA that much because back in those days in the 90s when it happened, you know, I was pretty isolated. I was doing some things here and I just wasn't involved. But I remember the riots in Chicago in 1968 when King was killed. And I remember my parents talking about how the neighborhoods blew up, right? And they're tearing up everything. They're burning shit down for real in Chicago. They burned down the West Side. It has never been rebuilt. Not in 50 years. It's never been rebuilt. And I remember my parents saying that in certain neighborhoods, like in the Italian neighborhoods, they had these guys, they were loaded and ready for.
We lost your camera. There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. I had a phone call.
No.
I remember my parents saying that like different ethnic groups like the Italians were like, no, you're not coming over here with that bullshit. And basically the riots that happened after MLK was killed in Chicago, the riots were contained into the Black communities because the whites and other communities, they had guns and they said, you're not bringing that shit over here. And they did.
Wow. Thank you for telling me that, because that's something I like to tell my liberal friends who pretend like you're not allowed to defend your home, like that's somehow racist or something.
You know, you are allowed to defend your home. Like my boyfriend told me, if it's got to be them or you, let it be them.
Yeah, fair enough. May I continue? I wanted to point out one other thing, if I may.
Go right ahead, please.
Thank you.
So that they'll make the mistakes that we see happen so often.
So really, Fleek, it's about reaching them in a different way, using
exactly.
everything we can to try and touch them about what's happening in our city.
So it's a 2.5-hour play, but we're going to give you just little small snippets of it. Let's set up this particular scene.
Well, this particular scene is about two friends that are involved with an argument through social media.
It looks
social
like
media is a big one.
They're arguing in a classroom here.
Right, and the mother told one, look, leave it alone, too much going on with the social media stuff. Leave them girls alone.
Okay. Take it away, young ladies.
Bro, I can't believe my mom was serious about us not entertaining that social media stuff and coming up to the school. It was never that serious. We can handle it ourselves. You know what? You're right. We can't handle it ourselves. So let's go meet up with them at the school. Wait. Sarissa, what? What? You heard me. I heard you, but didn't you hear what my mom said last night? I did, but we go to school with them every day. She doesn't. I understand that, but my mom was serious about us not entertaining her social media stuff. And I don't want to get in trouble. So. You're not going to get in trouble, and nothing is going to happen. How do you know that? Because I know everything. You think that? I know everything. But I promise nothing is going to happen, and I have your back. All right. But we have to get back to my house before my mom gets off work. We will. You promise? Yes, I promise.
So she's doing a lot of promising that nothing bad's going to happen. So we'll see how that plays out.
But that's how a lot of this starts, right? It's something that's said on social media, and they want to address it or handle it their way.
Exactly, and it often ends in tragedy. You know, they don't see how bad it could get. So a little social media beef going back and forth. Mom already told them, you know, don't go that way. A lot of times they don't listen to mom or dad. They make these decisions. You got one girlfriend who's, you know, pushing her, pressing her, and the outcomes always, you know, most of the time end up devastating, especially now.
Let's see how another situation turns out. This time on a playground.
No, this is the same. This is the same situation, right? This is what happens after the fact.
This is an accident. Yes, this is after the fact.
I never meant for anyone to get shot. Me neither. But somebody did. And all because of a boy? You're right. Maybe I shouldn't have been such an instigator. And she would have never been killed. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. No, hey, look at me. Hey, it's not your fault, okay? There's not one person to blame. It's on all of us. Okay, we should have just found a common ground to get a better understanding of what was needed for the situation. We should have just talked it out and not allowed things to go as far as they did. You're right. But, hi, Monique and I pushed you to fight. You never wanted to fight. You just wanted to leave. Yeah, but I did. And I didn't have to fight just because you told me to. I should have made a better choice, and that was to talk. And after what happened, Malika will never be the same again. Yeah. After hearing that she got shot, and later finding out that she died, that stuff really messed with her. It's just so sad how this has changed so many lives. Still to.
Right there. Can I point that out?
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think of these two scenes so far? These are the only two scenes they show from the show.
Well, I think that one of the more common problems is that they don't believe in consequences. They don't believe consequences will apply to them. You know, even though they know, you know, this, it could happen. You didn't mean for her to be shot, but somebody brought a gun. So if they didn't bring the gun, how could, if you know what I mean? If they didn't bring the gun, nobody could have been shot. You know, look, girls fight. White girls, black girls, Latino girls, Asian girls, they fight. People fight. But when you throw a gun in the mix, now you're taking things up some notches. And the fact that guns are so readily available, and the fact that the culture basically says, go with it. This is part of what you do. You bring a gun. You escalate the situation.
Or you fight.
You know what? Girl, like I said, I've seen girls do this kind of thing. Not so much my generation, but I've seen young girls really immersed in Blackistan culture, the whole toxicity, the gangs, the this, the that, whatever they want to do to impress a boy, you know, the mean girls. And but when you have a gun, it ups everything. Everything is up some notches. And now you've got, like, you know, some fatal consequences. But they still don't have a clue of what could actually happen, because the culture doesn't talk about that. The culture doesn't talk about morality.
I didn't like what the girl said when she said, like, now we're all suffering.
Oh, we're suffering? No. How about the victim and the victim's family are suffering?
Thank you. Yeah, did you hear her say that? Now we're all
Yeah.
going through it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Pity poor me because I did something heinous and now I feel bad about it.
And as a mother, if I could ask you, so this girl told this girl to fight.
Hmm.
As a mom, would you tell this girl to stop hanging around this girl?
I would. You know what? Look, I got a teenager. Okay, plain. I got a teenager. If I thought my kid was hanging around somebody like that, like the girl with the braids, you know, talking all that yak, I would completely take my child out of that situation. You know what? You can talk to her, but you're gonna talk to her from another country. Okay, I would snatch my child out of this country and send him back to his father's country before I allow him to be immersed with trash like that with those kind of values that can drag him down to do something horrible that would ruin his life. That would ruin his life. Oh yeah, that she ain't got nothing coming. I would snatch my child out of that situation.
She gone. All right, if I may, I'll finish it from here, Boy. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
It's just so sad how this has changed so many lives. Still to this day. Till this day. Will we ever get through this? Like, ever get through this? I don't know, Kay. I really don't know. I hope we can, but I just don't know. Maybe today could be a start. You're right.
So
I'm sorry, they both need to go to jail.
Go. Please.
No, this was a conspiracy and they carried it out and somebody died. They both need to go to jail.
And do you think this takes away from the seriousness of what they did when they try to say, and they say that in the news a lot, they'll say, when a person is killed, they'll say 2 lives have been lost today because one person's going to prison. Actually, if I can, they do that in this video. Can I play that?
Mm-hmm.
But my God, it's our reality, isn't it, in this city? We've had 27 teenagers shot, and it's only March 7th.
Right there. What do you think about the fact that he is watching a play about the black community and the violence that happens in their community, and in this case it's involving teenagers, so you could say kids, and he says it's moving and he says we have to do something, but then he lies by omission. Which demographic were those kids killed in, and who killed them?
They're killing each other.
But he won't say that.
Because you can't say it because they are protected. If you criticize Blackistan, the first thing everybody's gonna, throw their arms up screaming, "Oh, racist. You're a racist." But let's face facts. Some of the things that are happening has the only thing race has to do with is that these are black people preying upon themselves. Okay. This is how they're bringing their children up. The children are getting worse and worse. We got a whole problem here in my city. You're out east, I'm in the Midwest, but we got the same teenagers in Chicago that they were carjacking so many Uber drivers that nobody wanted to drive for Uber, and it drove up the price.
Oh, do you mean the Kia boys?
I'm talking about the carjackings that they were going out for. They were calling for Ubers. And when the Uber driver pulled up, they would carjack them. Oof. Whatever kind of car they had were driving. And these were kids. These were teenagers. Because remember what was happening in COVID. Nobody was in school. So you had all these children, footloose and fancy free. And what did they do? They created a crime wave.
Maybe that's why maybe that's why mammies always expect things to happen for their kids and their kids need something to do because they realize if they're not doing something.
Because if you don't give them something to do, they're going to get into mischief. It is what it is.
Yeah, protected class is right.
They are a protected class. You cannot outright criticize them, because if you do, the first thing people are going to scream, they're going to scream racism if you criticize them and you're not black. And if you're black and you criticize them, they're going to say, well, all the things that they say about black people who criticize other black people.
Sure.
That we're sellouts. No, we are people who actually have morals and values, who practice those morals and values, who will judge you if you step out of line. And I don't want to hear your excuses. I had a nephew about 14 years ago who was living on the South Side, and he was murdered. Walking down the street, drive-by. What was he doing? Was he involved in anything? No, he was just visiting his girlfriend who lived in a really bad neighborhood, and they decided to shoot up the neighborhood, and they murdered him on the street like a dog. There was a woman next to him, this mother who, had a gang of kids, killed her, shot a couple of other people. The other people lived, but my nephew was murdered in cold blood by strangers who were just out for shits and giggles, shooting up the neighborhood. Nobody was ever caught. Nobody ever spoke about it. We don't know who did it. We don't know why, but we still had to bury him, didn't we?
Yeah. I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah, you know what? And he seemed like he was a good kid. He had a difficult life because my brother wasn't the best father, and his mother was, just inadequate.
So you think they're partially to blame for keeping him in a war zone?
I completely blame. I blame my brother. I blame my brother for the death of his child, for keeping him in that environment, for not doing right by his child.
I guess this is something I'll point out. I find it strange that the FBI is able to pinpoint and find everybody who was outside of the Capitol by facial recognition and cell phone pings. But for some reason, when black children or black teens Instagram Live or Facebook Live what they do and will show on their cell phone, for some reason, it seems as though we have the resources. If we wanted to, go ahead, please.
Look, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm about to say something really rude, and I'm on YouTube. Okay, but they don't care about them ninjas. If they want to kill each other, don't nobody care. That's just one less ninja in the world. Nobody's speaking up. Who's outraged? The parents, maybe, but who in their community for real is outraged? They may be outraged a little bit, but not enough to do anything about it. Not enough to change. And that's why the criminals go free, because they're protected. The mammies don't want to turn in their little gang banging sons. Sorry.
I'm just trying to. I hear this a lot on Ock Nation News where he calls white people gliders, and gliders always try to like rationalize and logically and why it's like he's like there is no logic to it. It's just it's a form of clout chasing. And he said he says if you're a shooter, you're sought after by women because you can provide protection and you're respected in your community. It was.
I don't look. I know a lot about gang culture. I know a lot about gang culture because my mother's brother was one of the founding members of the Black Keystone Nation on the south side of Chicago. I grew up out in the suburbs in the country. But my father owned a liquor store on the south side. So I know both. No, the shooters, we know they just wretched and trash. Nobody's seeking them out. Nobody's seeking them out. There's no status for that. It just is what it is. A lot of them are shooters, or if they're not shooters, they're good friends with the shooters. And who are they protecting? Black women and children are not protected by anybody. They are preying on us. We are their main prey. Look at how many of us are dying every day, every 5 hours, on and on. And you know what? That 5 hours, I don't agree with that, because look at how many Black women are missing.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal did an article last year. They said 2,077 Black women were toe tagged, and 83% of the cases are unsolved. And
nobody cares. They don't care about us. We are Black women in this country. I don't know who's considered the lowest of the low. Is it Black women or is it Indigenous women? I don't know who's lower considered, like on the totem pole in this country. But nobody cares about Black women. They only care about us when we're entertaining.
Or when you vote.
Oh yeah, they care about us as a voting bloc. But when the vote is over, everything goes back to normal.
Do you think that play is actually going to do anything?
No.
Do you think any kids in, like I was saying, if you went to like Roman Catholic or South Philly High or Overbrook or Roxborough, and you ask those kids, do you want to go see a play?
Honey, it's just masturbation. That's all it is.
And I'll ask one more question, what you think about this, just because you have, again, I have my perspective, but when people from your community say, what do you think of the phrase school to prison pipeline?
I'm torn on that. I'm torn on that because I do understand that we do have prisons for profit. After slavery, they still needed all of that labor. And so then they started creating all of these prisons and making up all these bullshit laws to lock up the ex-slaves. And then so you had, all of a sudden you had this growth of Black people, who were former slaves. Now they're in prison and now they're like doing all of this work to produce whatever. Okay, that happened. Now, when they started talking about the school to prison pipeline, okay, that kind of came about later on. I'm going to say,
Eric Holder in 2008. Eric Holder, 2008.
It came about much, much later. I'm going to say around the crack epidemic. That's when it started really, really, coming to the forefront. And then the prison populations really exploded. And I'm not sure when we started having all of these prisons for profit, where they want to fill the beds because these people, it's making them money. And then you have corrupt judges and stuff that are locking up these kids and getting payola over it. But I will say this. The school system that a lot of these kids are in. Now, my son, we moved to Chicago a couple of years ago, and my son had to attend a Chicago public school. And so I got a crash course education on what's going on in the school systems, because the school system that he was in was nothing like this.
Oh, please.
They're not educating these kids. Let me see. The main boy bathroom, my son always had a puddle in it, because there's no maintenance to get everything done. They had no school library. The classes are garbage. They're not teaching these kids anything. And so these kids are in school. Yeah, they're going through metal detectors, but they're not learning anything. They're just being passed along because it's the, no child left behind. And so you've got these kids who are finishing high school with a 4th grade, level that they can read at. They're going to prison, but it's not because of the school to prison pipeline, it's because of the culture. They're not being educated. They're not having opportunities. They're acting out. They're antisocial. Some of them are violent. They're committing crime because it's part of the culture and it's glorified. And and you're going to get your ass locked up. You're going to prison just like your daddy went to prison.
One thing that happened with Eric Holder under the Obama administration was they created these consent decrees with a lot of these school districts where, for instance, in Baltimore, a girl was stabbed 10 times in the bathroom, and another girl who filmed it, she was expelled. The girl who filmed it on her phone.
Just expelled?
Well, I don't. The mom takes her daughter's side. The angle of the phone is that she's in a bathroom stall and she's holding the phone over the top of the bathroom stall. So maybe the argument could be made that she locked herself in. But to me, it's either if you're in fear of your life, why are you filming it with the phone? Or she could be aware that nothing was going to happen and maybe she was trying to film it to show somebody. They don't actually ask her. They only talk to the mom. But to use an example of what you're saying, do you follow Project Baltimore?
Mm-mm.
So Project Baltimore did an interview where they conducted tests at 23 schools and 22,000 kids.
Okay. I heard this.
Yeah, they're not up to grade level at math or English, and 1 out of every 10 high school kids is reading at a kindergarten level.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the consent decrees by Eric Holder, if 50% of your school population is black, the suspension and expulsion rates cannot go above 50%, or it's deemed racist and you could lose federal funding. So what happens is to even out the numbers in places like Philadelphia, when black kids commit really bad things, you could say they're given a slap on the wrist, or they're just given some bullshit class to bring their grade up in the past 2 weeks. And if another kid from another group, Latino, Asian, white, if they commit you could say maybe less of an infraction, they're given a suspension. They could be given a more dramatic punishment. And this was evident by what happened in Florida. A 9-year-old girl was attacked, almost murdered on a bus by a 14-year-old black boy. She was holding his waist and he was just punching her in the head like 50, 60 times.
I saw that video.
And the Latino family, and again, I would have expected it if it was a white family, because it's normal now to just tell the white people, fuck you. But this Latino family, I think they're immigrants. They were told, take your kid out of the school. And the kid was given a civil citation. So that came forward after Eric Holder in 2008. And
I saw that video. That kid beat that child he beat the hell out of her. That was a little girl.
Yeah, she was 9.
He beat the hell out of her. And he got a suspension?
No, he got a civil citation. I don't know.
A civil citation. Okay.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either, because that sounds like, was it like a traffic ticket?
And if I could do a comparison with Philadelphia and Baltimore, when it comes to federal funding, Baltimore is one of the top 3 funded school districts in the country. I think they have something like 70,000 students, and they average $20,000 to $21,000 per student. And Philadelphia has like a 44% illiteracy rate, where the high school kids, 44% of high school kids read at a 6th grade or lower reading level. But the school board of Philadelphia is asking for another $1 billion to their budget.
For what?
And
for salaries?
An argument has been made that it is management and not money. but 35% of those taxes come from the capital, which is Harrisburg. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll tell you, my kiddo was in the school system in the northern suburbs of Chicago. As a matter of fact, the suburbs that we were in, they were public schools, and they were ranked, I think, right in our area. Two of the schools were ranked number 1 and number 2 in the state of Illinois. They were fantastic schools, and but of course, school funding. Most of school funding comes from the neighboring community, and it was a very well-to-do community. But also the caliber of the teachers, the follow through, it was absolutely amazing. And then we came to Chicago, and the school systems here are the public school systems here are absolute garbage. I don't think it's so much a matter of money, but I think money has something to do with it. I think a lot of it is mismanagement. And I'm not a teacher, but I listen to teachers and I hear them talk about all the rules and regulations that they have to go through to deal with these kids. And some of it goes all the way back, not just to Eric Holder, but it goes back to, George Bush Jr., when he had the whole No Child Left Behind program, and they started testing the hell out of all of these kids, and the kids were failing. Okay, the kids were half-ass illiterate, but you could not leave them behind. And so what happened was they just started pushing them through. And so you had the kid who maybe would have flunked out of school in the 9th grade, but they pushed them all the way through. And some of these kids were delinquents, and some of these kids were violent, and some of these kids should have been expelled. But they're all in there together.
That's a reason that's presented in a Baltimore article, which is they say we can't hold the kids back because it does too much psychological damage to the kid if they're not with their peers. They presented a story of, and this is something the news likes to do, is they like to take away from the larger issue. They like to find one story, one person to focus on, to act like that one person, if that one person is changing, then somehow the whole community's changing. And they don't, that's one way I've noticed they try to like talk down the problem and act like it's not as bad as it is. So they had a single mom, and her son was going to actually be held back from 12th grade to 9th grade because in his entire high school career, he only passed 3 classes. And he had missed 270 days of school. And her reaction was, the school failed.
School failed. She never paid attention to the fact that her kid is, ditching school, and she never paid attention to his report cards all of that time.
In the news clip, he's actually playing video games, and she is rubbing his head saying, "We are going to get through this, baby."
Poor baby.
Yes.
Poor baby. Oh, sugar, it's going to be okay. I know you illiterate and stupid, but it's going to be okay. We're going to get you a job cleaning up the parking lot at the gas station. It's going to be okay.
Oh, no, he could be a violence interrupter.
Oh. Okay.
What? Okay. So I guess I'll make this the last question. I don't want to.
That's okay.
So in response to, I'm trying to like have a connecting of the dots here, the questions. So an answer from Baltimore with the school to prison pipeline is they're now running a pilot program with their violence interrupters where they're now going to put violence interrupters in the schools. And if anybody remembers last year, 3 violence interrupters in Baltimore have been shot. One of them was an activist who would go around spraying no gun zone on the ground and graffiti. I don't know what the point of that is when kids can't read, but he was in an altercation his girlfriend talked about where he tried to stab somebody. And then finally he was on video with a big ass knife addressing a woman coming at her. And then he falls on top of her with the knife, and a cop had pulled up on him, and there's a body cam footage where the cop is getting out of the car, pulls his gun, drop the knife. And when the guy gets on top of the one with the knife, the cop just mag dumps into him. And of course, the community was outraged, and you didn't have to shoot my baby. And why'd you have to shoot my baby so many times? And
so the hell with the woman that's up underneath him, with this guy with a knife, right?
right.
He's the victim, not her.
Right. It was similar to the Micaiah Bryant shooting. So what do you think of putting ex-criminals? What do you think about a community that has more respect for criminals than for police officers? Isn't that
that's Blackistan, right? Isn't it?
I just find it weird that they would complain about their children going to school, but then turn around and say, well, the people in the prison, let's bring them to the school.
Right. So they can teach your kids how to be better criminals.
Right.
So they can teach your kids how to get away with crime.
Right.
Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah, I wonder what made somebody qualified to work with children.
Thank you. Aren't children supposed to be protected? You're literally putting not the fox, but the wolves in the hen house.
That's a good analogy. Yeah. Nobody asks the mayor never wants to answer any questions. And Baltimore has a very young mayor. He was a council member, and I think he's one of the youngest black mayor to ever be elected. Mm-hmm. And you try to ask him, these people who are violence interrupters, did they go through a rehabilitation program? Have they turned their life around? Do they now own a business? Have they disregarded their ways that got them in prison? How were they chosen? What is the selection process? What is the interview process? What is the psychological exam that these people go through to be around children? Who I have stories from London where drill rappers, and in London it's called knife violence.
Mm-hmm.
You have drill rappers from the Caribbean. They'll go there's a guy named Young Flo or Flo Young, and he went to a high school, and he would recruit young kids to be in his gang so they could kidnap other gang members. So I'm curious, why wouldn't these criminals go into the school and be like, hey, if you work with me, we can run the school? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
What is that one play? Is it Oliver Twist with Fagin?
Yes, he's the pickpocket. He's the leader
right,
of the pickpockets.
Who recruits all the kids so they can be pickpockets too?
Yes, that's Fagin.
Isn't this kind of a version of that?
Well, with these type of people, they always seem, I call it all light and no shadow. They never seem to consider the cons.
Because they never consider the victims. They just consider the perpetrator.
Yeah.
But there are real live victims out there who are traumatized, whose lives are destroyed by these perpetrators. And they just suffer and they just go on. Nobody considers the victims. Let's save the perpetrators. Let's save these people who are prone to violence. Never mind the girl who got stabbed in the bathroom, how many times, stab, or the 9-year-old who got the hell beat out of her, or the woman that the guy was laying on top of with a knife. Forget them. Let's concentrate on the poor perpetrator and what brought him to this.
Yeah, it always seems to be what's done to them, and like you said, never what they do to everyone else.
Right. They're the menaces. They're the menaces for real. And I will tell you honestly, I don't have any answers. My answer for me personally is to get the hell away from them. As far as I'm concerned, you could put a big wall around Blackistan and just let them go at it.
Oh, so the Israel answer, a big wall, wall with machine guns.
Okay. I don't want to get into Israel and Palestine, but you know what? But look, I don't know what to do, but I do know this. If I lived in a really, really crappy neighborhood, I would make it my business to get the hell out of that neighborhood. I'm going to tell you a story. True story.
Oh, please.
Okay. One of my brothers, many years ago, he was newly married to this beautiful woman, and they bought a house, in this neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. And my brother didn't know anything about Chicago, and his wife, she didn't know a lot. And so, but the realtor said, hey, this neighborhood is up and coming. This is a great deal. They bought a house. They completely gutted it and rehabbed it. And he told me, he said, hey, come over here and live. You take the top floor. I'll take the bottom floor, and we'll split the mortgage. And the mortgage was super cheap. But guess where it was? It was in Inglewood in Chicago. Okay.
Hell no.
Yeah, right. Right. Okay. I made it about a year and a half. And I told my brother, I said, I gotta go because I'm afraid. And I was genuinely afraid. And my son at the time was living with his father in El Salvador. And I said, I can't bring my son back to this environment because close to where I was living, there was a memorial on the sidewalk for a little child who, was running across the street to go buy some candy and got gunned down. And I said, it could be my kid. And so I told my brother, I said, I would rather pay double or triple the amount for rent. I would rather I sell plasma, than live in this shithole and bring my child home so my child could be put in danger. So once again, I divested myself right away out of that community. But there are people who want to stay there, who choose to stay there, who cannot look up from the gutter. And they live in that environment, and they breathe that environment, and they bring their children up their environment. And then they wonder why 1, 2, 3 of their sons are all murdered by gangbangers because they're gangbangers themselves. They wonder why their daughters are pregnant at 14 by some 29-year-old. They wonder why their kids can't get an education because you're living in a toxic environment, a toxic, brutal environment. And it seems like for some of them, that's where they want to be. So I don't argue with Dusties. I don't argue with Mammies. I just keep my distance. That's what you want. Go for it. C'est la vie. Que sera, sera.
And if any other group is able to identify and recognize violence, do you see anything wrong with that group saying, I want nothing to do with this and it's not my responsibility to solve it?
It's not their responsibility to solve it. I would, look, I have married out. I've married out twice.
Swirler.
Okay. No, I'm not a swirler.
I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I know the terminology.
Yeah, I know, but that's not what I am. Okay, first of all, I don't really date white men. I don't date white men because I have had hate crimes committed against me by white men. And I'm not old enough, but back in the day, my parents had a vacation house that white people burned down because they didn't want black people living in the community. Hello, Michigan. It's not just the South. But I don't have issues with white people. I'm just not really attracted to a lot of them because that's still in the back of my head. But I do date. When I dated, I would say white adjacent. Because when I was growing up, Italians weren't considered white. Neither were Jews. And I've dated a few of them. But anyway, I've dated out. I've seen other people's reaction to the Black community. I have seen Latinos' reaction to the Black community. I have seen Asians' reactions to the Black community. And you know what? The Black community is scary, especially to Asians. It's scary. And no, they shouldn't have to put up with it. If they need to protect themselves, hell yeah, protect yourselves. Why should you go down the drain too? Why should you be a victim too? Why should you be victimized?
Yeah.
Yeah, protect yourself. Hell yeah, protect yourself.
Can I share a personal story of something that's happened where I live now, and I'll
Okay.
ask your opinion,
Okay.
and then I keep saying that. So I moved to a 85% Indian suburb,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been told by an Indian family that they prefer their children play with other Indians, and that's fine. And I find it funny that my own parents thought that was acceptable, but they said, "Well, your children have to accept everybody." And I said, "Why?" But something that happened in this neighborhood was a family from Bmore moved in,
Mm-hmm.
and I would routinely see this father, I guess, was struggling with his son being away from Baltimore because a lot of his son's friends kept showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one really bad altercation with them, with the kids. The kids. I had my, and you see them do things, and I stopped walking my dog around there because they would be just being kids from Baltimore. One time I saw the father come out and he even yelled at him. He said, "All right, you're saying the N word way too much. If I hear one more N word, everyone's going home." And one time I had my daughter in a wagon, and in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia is really the only city you're not allowed to open carry. And I don't recommend open carrying in any Blackistan anyway, because they'll try to take it from you.
Mm-hmm.
Concealed carry is the better option. But I'm in my suburb and I open carry, and a bunch of these kids were coming up the street, just walking down the middle of the street. We got a sidewalk on each side of the street, and you're hearing them, "Yeah, be more, man. Yeah, look at these houses. These nice. They don't got this in be more." And a couple Indian kids went by, and all of a sudden, Blackistan split out, and on each side they chased the Indian kids. "Yo, give me that bike! Give me that bike!" And the Indian kids pedal furiously away. And there's a Middle Eastern family right across from me. And she grabs her kids and she runs back in the house. Right now, my daughter's in a wagon. I was never going to make it to my home. I was never going to run away fast enough. And they had covered a lot of distance chasing after those kids on the bikes. So you can't give your back. So I walked up a driveway. I took a kneeling position and I faced down the driveway. And for whatever reason, they had started walking up the driveway towards me. And, I don't know any of these kids. And the only thing I have in my mind is I'm going to protect my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in a kneeling position and I'm facing them, and I put my hands, I unwrap my gun and I wrap my cloth around it so you can clearly see it. And I just put my hands on my belt and I just face them. And then one of them points at me and he sees it. And for whatever reason, for whatever you want to say, I'm going to say they didn't have anything. And they turn around and they go, "Fuck this." And they just walk back down the driveway.
Because they want an easy victim.
And, this happened on my street. I don't live in Philly anymore. And what I noticed is after that happened, they've never been back.
Because it wasn't such easy pickings, eh?
Well, I don't think that's going to stop them from, I don't think they're going to learn anything. Even the 4 people who were shot by Bernard Goetz in 1984, they one of them went on to be sent to prison for 25 years after raping a girl on a roof, and he had been shot by a white guy in a subway. So it's like it didn't change anything.
It didn't change anything, but what I think, I don't know. What I think happened is that they like easy pickings. They don't want resistance for their criminality. They want easy pickings. They want to see, oh, let me go chase the skinny Indian kid and grab his bike. Oh, here's, the white dad with his daughter. Let's see if we can intimidate him. And when it's not so easy, they move on to different territory.
I'm gonna be honest. I was terrified. I
And
about
you
shit
should be.
myself.
And you should be.
You're not gonna win. The only thing I could think was, okay, I'm gonna get 2 shots off,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm gonna have it taken from me, and I'm gonna be beaten to death. But the first person who gets near me, I can get 2 shots on you.
Mm-hmm.
So that we're just gonna, here we go. And it was so strange because all those feelings that I haven't had for years, since 2016 living here, that all came back. Having to be aware, having to look around, having to look over my shoulder, having my head on a swivel. And so when you say, that's a hard thing to explain to people. That's why I'm kind of like, on one hand, I do feel bad for some of these kids because you're in this super, super dangerous environment where you're around this criminality all the time. But then I have to take your position and say, well, I've been to my 5th funeral where my friend has been killed. Why am I still doing this? When does the Darwinism, when does the self-awareness kick in,
It's a big deal. I mean, who's more important? Their feelings? Their feelings or your survival?
Yeah. That's what I say to white people around me. It's like, look, do you want to be racist or you want a dead kid? What do you want?
Right.
I'm gonna be racist. I don't care.
I don't even know if it's racism. To me, I think it's racism if you just you just hate a certain group of people just because you just hate a certain group of people. Not that they've done anything. You don't even have any experience with them. You just hate them. Period. Whatever. Okay. I'm no scholar. But if you see a group of people that are dangerous, no matter who they are, and if they're all black or if they're all Mexican or if they're all Asian, whatever the hell it is, and you see that group of people and you understand that that group of people is dangerous, is it racism to look at them and say, these people are dangerous, I don't want them near me, and I'm going to do what I can to keep them the hell away from me and keep myself safe and my family safe?
Sure. No, I agree with you. It's just the people out here, the school system out here, they're trying to teach children to feel sorry for the people who murder them.
You know what? I got a whole John Wayne attitude. and I don't, I'm sorry, you kill my family member?
Yeah.
I'm not going to feel sorry for you. I'm going to be thinking some horrendous thoughts that possibly could land me in prison for revenge.
Based. Yeah, the Russian Woods treatment.
I'm not going to sit up there and just cry. If I know that you have done this horrible, look, I got a kid in there right now. Anything happened to him? Look, yeah. All bets are off. All bets are off. I'm not going to be the only person crying.
Yeah, I agree. Well.
So sorry. My John Wayne just came out.
No, that's necessary. I think I say this, and I use the example again of DeSantis. When DeSantis created what the Democrats called the "Don't Say Gay" bill, which is basically just kind of like a secular, no sexuality can be talked about from kindergarten through 3rd grade.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I read the bill, and it was a very secular thing. Like, hey, look, we don't even want you talking about heteronormative patterns of dating, whatever. It doesn't need to be discussed.
It's not
Oth-
appropriate.
yeah. Other Republican-led cities and councils started to follow suit. So it's just an example of if one person can actually do something, someone else might say, maybe I can do that too. You know what I mean?
Well, it's amazing that he was able to do that. I know there is there's a law being proposed. I'm not sure. It's in a southern state, I believe, where they are saying they're banning adult cabaret
Tennessee.
performers, from performing for children.
Yeah.
Now, people are saying, oh, that's anti-trans. I don't see it as anti-trans. I see it as adult cabaret performers performing for children. To me,
that's normalizing pedophilia.
Thank you. You're giving access to children.
Yes.
To people who have no business being around children. I don't need a drag queen in a thong throwing himself across the floor, lip syncing till God knows what for a kindergartner. You take that weirdo shit somewhere else. But I wouldn't take my kid to a strip club. I wouldn't take my kid to Hooters.
A millstone hung on the neck and flung into the sea.
Take that debauchery somewhere else. It is not appropriate. Can the children be children? Can the children keep their innocence? What is with these weird, creepy ass adults who are trying to impose their sexuality and force conversations with other people's children about sexuality and all the rest of this? I'm talking young children. Like, how is this acceptable?
Yeah, that's currently happening. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is now they're trying to move into Pennsylvania now, and they've picked Central Bucks High School. Central Bucks High School just recently went and passed bills saying they're going to remove certain books out of the library. They're not going to allow pronouns to be hidden from the parents. They're not going to do those type of things. And now the SPLC is starting a crusade against the school. The news is getting involved. They're calling the members on the board Christian nationalists. And they're trying to publicly scare the school into bending the knee. And that way they can allow it to spread out across the state.
The sad thing is, it's just not happening here in the United States. It's happening in Canada. It's all through, the UK. It's happening everywhere. That this whole movement is taken root, and children are in danger. They want access to the kids, and even though I am not a Christian nationalist, not at all. And I don't agree with a lot of things that some of these people over there on the right have to say. But I do say this, at least they're trying to protect the children and not just leave the children, swinging in the damn breeze for pedos.
Yeah. When Joy Reid has transgender people on her show talking about reading to children.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Why are transgendered people reading? What qualifications do they have other than body dysmorphia, or whatever it's called? Yeah. What qualifications do they have to come and read to children?
Well, Pennsylvania can be to blame. We gave Richard Levine to the Biden administration, and now he's an admiral in the Navy. And what's interesting is Richard Levine used to have a PhD in eating disorders. So he was a doctor, but he specialized in eating disorders in teenagers. But I don't know how that qualifies you to be a doctor that specializes in sexual mental things. You know what I mean?
Every time you say something, I swear it pings with me. My younger sister had an eating disorder. She had an eating disorder her whole life. And she got with a man who who wanted her to be, thin. And so he convinced her to have the gastric bypass.
Oof.
So she had gastric bypass. And then she stopped eating. And she became anorexic. And it took a little while, because at first they installed a feeding tube in her stomach that they would come and like let this feeding tube feed her all night long to keep her weight up a certain amount. But then they said, oh, let's take this feeding tube out, blah, blah, blah. So my sister died, and she was 72 pounds when she died from anorexia. Nobody around her was saying, oh, nobody was coddling her. Nobody was saying that what she was saying about her vision of her body was correct. Nobody was saying, oh, it's okay that you don't eat. Yes, you are still fat. This whole body, it's they only do it to people who say, I want to be the other gender. Okay, but if somebody says, I'm a healthy individual, but I want to be blind. Can you blind me? Can you take my eyes out? No doctor's going to do that.
Well, actually,
or you know what?
To be more, unfortunately, I don't. So in Canada, they're now using a Swedish-made company has created a euthanasia chamber, and they're now recommending this chamber to. I don't mean to blackpill you more, but they're now recommending this chamber to people. And Justin Trudeau was talking about mature minors.
Mature minors.
Yes. And to take it a step further, I'm sure you watch, I don't know if you watch TV or ads on TV, but I'm sure you know. No. So go on Google and type in white couple. You won't find it. Every couple on TV, every couple, every ad, every commercial is an interracial couple. However, when this company for this Kevorkian chamber was made, they were all white. There was not a single minority person in this commercial. So the message I took was, walk to your death. And this is the type of thing I'm trying to say to my people, which is, at some point before you're pushed into an oven, maybe you should say, I don't deserve this. But it's by the time you're being pushed in the oven, it's too late.
I understand a couple of things. But I do understand self-preservation. I understand that. My whole thing is this. Please don't lump me in with them. Okay? Don't lump me in with that. I understand that there is, this whole culture has shifted. And white people have been guilted into not being able to express certain things. And like, Pookies and Ray Rays, they are a protected class. And the mammies are the main ones out there, like, stomping the yards for them. And if you say anything about them, you're automatically, considered a racist.
Well, there's another group, but yeah. Okay. Let me put it this way. I actually, you know what? I have the video.
Okay.
I bring the receipts, right? Wonder what you think of this.
I believe. Could you give me a fact check on this? Doesn't he get paid to complain about stuff like this? If you get paid to look for injustice, what should you find? It's like somebody who's a ghost hunter. All right, I'm going to pay you to find ghosts. How many did you find? Well, are you paying me by the ghost? Yes, I am. I found quite a few. Ghosts. So Jonathan Greenblatt, who gets paid to find ghosts, he found some ghosts. Good job. And he would like to have me apologize for what I don't know. And then he would have me re-educated.
So you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
That's Scott Adams. He's been in a lot of hot water because a week or so ago he came out with a video from a Rasmussen poll. Rasmussen is a conservative outlet, and they were asking questions. They asked like 1,000 people, and I think 130 of them were black, and they said, "Is it okay to be white?" And 27% of the black said no, and something like 22% of the black said we don't know. And he took that poll, and he basically, I don't think he was aware of the group of people. It's a very small sample size, but he basically said, I don't want to be a part of a hate group. And he's a lefty. He's a big lefty. You know, he's donated lots of money. He's given money to an African school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, but he said, I've been called a racist my whole life. Nothing I do is right. I don't want to be a part of a hate group. I'm tired of seeing white people beaten up on Twitter every day. My advice to white people, get the fuck away. Get as far the fuck away as you can.
Is that the Dilbert guy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, for some reason, on every single conservative pundit, outlet, news source, they don't mention this part of the video. Why did one group of people feel that they need to personally reach out to him and say that he needs to be re-educated? Last time I checked, Cynthia G, divested zealot, I don't have any news of them ever having mentioned that one group of people reached out to them to be re-educated. And I just find it strange that this part of the video is never talked about.
Because they're only going to pick and choose what points, you know, what backs up what they want to put out there for you. They're only going to pick and choose this little tiny bit and say, well, you know, he said this, and so this fits our narrative of what we want to put out there. Okay, I think it's really interesting that people said, you know, is it okay to be, you know, white? I don't know. Why wouldn't it be okay? Hell, white people are on top, right?
Well,
okay, aren't they? Don't they? Look at the stats. Who owns most of everything? Who's created most of everything? Shit, okay, I love being black. Black. But you know what? If I were white, I would celebrate that shit too. Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be okay for everybody to be themselves? But you want to be the best version of yourself, right? And if black people are saying, you know, all these different things about white people, and, you know, and if I were white, I would say, yeah, I'm getting away from them too. Who needs the stress? I don't know. I feel I'm conflicted, but I understand. First of all, I understand self-preservation for everybody. I just wish that more black people had a sense of self-preservation.
Yeah.
But they don't.
I mean, me too. I've known, you know, it's a hard thing to say to people that I worked with people and then the next day they're dead. You know, I have that experience working in Philly. You know, I saw my first drive-by when I was 20, and you know, you have to tell people it's not the movies. You know, there's no speech. That it's just the kid dies. They're laying face down, and they're dead. And you know, and in the environment I'm in, surrounded by a group of people, they're very liberal Democrat. They don't understand. And when you try to talk about some of the things I'm talking about with you, it's worse. It's worse than talking about it with my group. They don't have like the guilt, but they're bought into the democratic machine. You know, I have a guy who he has a master's of business, and he's from Singapore, from India, but he's lived all around the world. He's my neighbor, and I was trying to talk to him. I was like, there's this college in Wisconsin, a Catholic college, and one of the professors, they're trying to censor him and kick him out because he doesn't believe in the whole diversity agenda. He says that's blasphemy against the Lord, And what's interesting is when you look at the new president of this Catholic college, it's one of the small hats. And this small hat is all about pushing this diversity, inclusion, transgender people in the church and everything. And I was trying to ask my neighbor, I said, what is a person of this faith doing on this Catholic board? And he said, oh, he used an ism word on me. That's an ism. Why would you say that? And I said, okay, where's your Hindu temple? And he said, oh, we go to a Hindu temple. I said, yeah, how many white Christians are on the board of your Hindu temple? And he said, none. I said, okay, so what's the problem? What don't you understand? It's a Catholic school. Why is there a Jew on the Catholic board? If I go to a mosque, how many Jews are on the board of the mosque? 0. Right?
Right.
So what's the problem? Like, why are you calling me an ist or an ism and everyone at your Hindu temple is an Indian? What are you talking about? And he doesn't want to answer it. He wants to act like I have a problem, and then he doesn't want to talk about it anymore.
Because it's very easy to throw those words around. It's very easy to call somebody a racist. It's very easy, to this is racism, this is anti-Semitism, this is all of these different things like that. It's easy to throw. It's harder to actually look and see what exactly are we talking about here. And people don't have a sense of fair play either. They want people to bend over backwards for certain groups. And if you don't, then you're supposed to feel guilty over it.
Oh, this is the same guy who told me he wants his kids to play with his kids, people who look like him. And I don't, and look, I hate, I say this to be honest. 2012, Trayvon Martin, 2016, Michael Brown, 2020, George Floyd. Who's going to be 2024? So this group of people, we're the out group. If they prefer themselves, that's 100% fine. But if the Wegmans or the Target or the Aldi's runs out of hamburger meat, I don't expect them to let us in.
Mm-mm.
I expect they're going to look at us and go, you're not us. You're on your own.
They're going to look to their own first.
Right. And that's totally fine. I don't, but at the same time, I kind of laugh at them because, my wife and I have pew-pews and they don't. They, oh, the guns are evil. I'm like, well, you can totally have that opinion. That's fine. I'm not, but don't tell me how to protect my family.
Right.
Period.
Look,
look,
my John Wayne attitude. I grew up with guns. My stepdad was a hunter. My dad owned a liquor store on the south side of Chicago. Guns, 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 guns. I have a gun. It is what it is. And I'm going to protect myself. And I don't care who from. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you have antennas coming out of your damn head. If you are a danger to me, an active and present danger to me, I am going to be an active and present danger to you.
Based.
So, my problem is this. I keep looking at the Black community and I feel so disappointed. that somehow logic has just left the building, left the community, left the community. There's no logic there. There's no sense of self-preservation. There's no sense of let's look to the future and build. Let's be better. No, let's just stay right down here. Oh, let's get even lower. Can we get lower? Can we get even lower? And let's revel in it, and then let's have this sense of
Kangs and
a
queens.
victimhood.
Yeah.
A victimhood. Look at all the terrible things that are happening to us historically. And yeah, terrible things have happened historically. But what are you doing today? What are you doing about it? How are you trying to change your future? What are your morals? What are your values? How are you trying to take your family and move up and do better? Or are you just lying in the gutter and saying, woe is me, pity poor me, somebody give me a link card? Oh, I don't know.
Any closing thoughts for any future divestors? Or
the only thing I would say to anybody who is divested is, you know what? If you're going to divest. Get the hell away from them. Don't be like, so many movies they have like, the people who run drugs, right? And they're just going to have one last hurrah and get high one last time, and then they end up dying. I mean, I'm sorry. I watched Breaking Bad and I watched all these other things. All right. Get out of Blackistan. Be divested. Get the hell away from them. If it's your relatives, get the hell away from your relatives. If they're pulling you down, get away from danger. Save yourself. And you know what? And explain later on while you're in a place of safety. And don't feel bad about it. Don't feel guilty about it. Leave them ninjas behind. Save yourself. That's what I have to say to other divestors. Save yourself. Save your children. And leave them behind. And you know what? And don't go digging in the garbage for for silver lining. Don't go digging in the garbage because you think there may be a sliver of something wonderful down there. It's all garbage. It's all tainted. Get the hell away. Save yourself. I did, and believe it or not, I'm having a wonderful life. Okay, I don't have the trauma. I have the trauma that I have endured because I'm related to people who've been traumatized. But personally, on a personal level, I've had a wonderful life without the trauma. Back away from it. Don't step into shit. That's all I have to say to anybody that's thinking about being divested, even if it's with your family. I don't even talk to my family anymore.
Yeah.
Be
Well,
free.
Miss Wicked and Wise, I just want to say thank you for your time and thank you for your insight. I greatly appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I know like some of the stuff I was saying is kind of like off the wall, but it's
No.
my humble opinion.
No, I'm used to hearing it. It's just I can't talk about it with anyone because unless they've been there, they don't know.
They don't know. But those who know. And you know what? Enough is enough is enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, if you ever want to do it again, I'll reach out to you. But thank you again so much.
All right, I'll be watching your channel. You can tune in on mine too.
Okay, I will. Absolutely.
Okay, mine is not really about divestment. It's about whatever pops into my head, but
No, for sure. I'll come by. Thank you. I appreciate that.
okay. All right, cool.
All
right, you have a great day.
You too. You take care. Please be safe.
Bye-bye.
Later.